I'm going to take you through this sketchbook that I've been working on for a long time, here and there, and there are 100 pages. There are 100 pages, and so it inspired me to do 100 pictures of some same kind of subject. What I decided to do in this sketchbook is do 100 drawings, or really sketches, of a full body person, a full figure drawing. And doesn't have to be super detailed, doesn't have to be any certain kind of way, except I want to do the full body, head to toe, and 100 different sketches of different kinds of people. This was a way bigger endeavor than I expected. Just being able to complete that many sketches has really taken me a long time in between other projects or other things going on, but I have at least got 50. I'm working on the rest. I want to walk you through those first 50 drawings and share some of the things that I learned. So we're just going to start flipping through these, and I loved being able to, this perspective of the feet are large and it kind of goes back to smaller head or smaller shoulders. I tried to include some of the background where it was helpful to kind of set the scene. Some of them had really great angles that I think helped you understand the perspective of the drawing, that helped it sort of make sense. I also really like some of these simple shadow lines. This gives it a little bit more of a dynamic feel. You can see they're all pretty sketchy and loose, and I found it's really a great way to kind of come at it, start loose, and then get into a little bit more specific details where it was helpful. In the foreshortening of the feet at the front, I really like that look, and there's a number of pictures that I was able to do that well. This one was interesting with a mirror image, and so I had the side and the back of one, but then the front edge or front face of that person right there. I didn't always draw the faces. Sometimes it felt like it was just too much for that day, and then sometimes it didn't. This one I kind of went for the stylized look. The shadow kind of was all connected. This one was just a shadow, but it was still the whole person. I really love the perspective here and how even on the boots you can see some of those lines, explaining the perspective, the foreshortening of the shoes. Kids are very interesting to draw because you don't want to put too much detail or hard lines in their face, so they're going to look old. Trying to understand how I can use simple lines for the face to explain those shapes without going into too much detail on such a small drawing. I couldn't figure out the face on this one, so I just left it blank for there. A classic character, if you know the show. Now, accessories or other things, this guitar I thought was a great part of this image. It has some perspective to it, some depth, and it has to fit in the right proportion and with his hands. Another great character from the show, if you know. Now, I was inspired a lot by the art from this movie and some of the characters that those artists drew. These are obviously not my own creation, but just copying some great art that I saw. A lot of times the things that you enjoy or the shows or movies that you like are great places to start because they're inspiring, they're fun, and give you something that feels exciting to get into, to draw, to try to recreate. I did a self-portrait here. This is the first time I've ever drawn my full body, and it was pretty tricky. And so when you do yourself, you just recognize yourself so well that you know if it's off or know if it's wrong. So it's a really great practice to draw yourself and see if you can do it in a way that feels accurate to you, because you'll always give yourself a little bit more grace for images or people that you don't personally recognize. Has a great perspective on the walls behind as well. Trying a new kind of stylized look here. Accessories are fun to add. They're interacting with the character, with the subject. Trying to find a lot of different kinds of poses, a lot of different kinds of people. This is 49 and this one was 50. So when you put them in an active pose or engaging with a different kind of item or accessory, it really gives you something to work with, something to kind of tell the story. And as you're kind of learning, as we're drawing, what helped me was just sort of like learning how can I make it look like it has movement, or how can I look like they're interacting, and understanding kind of putting those things together. So I'm going to take you through a couple quick steps on sort of how I approach most of these drawings. I'm going to start with the proportions, and with a human body, it's really, you usually kind of measure those by heads. So you think like there's one head, two heads, and you go down their body. So I'm looking at an image, I might use the back of my eraser or my thumb or my pinky, something that represents the size of their head that I can kind of go down the picture and say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Usually there's about 7 or 8 depending on the pose or how they're standing. And so I'll count those down. I'll mark like there's 2 to the waist, or there's 6 down to the heels. And so then I'll mark those on my paper. The same space, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll go down that way. And then I'll use simple lines to show the gesture, the movement, the position of their arms or their legs or their body. Sometimes they're turned, sometimes they're crouched, sometimes they're just standing. So I'll use basic lines, and then I'll kind of fill it in. How wide are their shoulders? Bring it down to their waist, put in the shapes of their clothes and other things that they're holding. And only after I get some of those proportions or main shapes together will I go in and put in detail. Put in the wrinkles of their clothes, or put in their hair and the different parts of the way their clothes move or the accessories that they have. And then I'll go into the background probably after that. So, should I do this? Should I try to draw 100 different versions of the same subject? I wouldn't try 100, but I would try to draw something a few times. Start with 5 or 10 and draw the same kind of thing, maybe even the exact same image multiple times. It's really a good practice to do something more than just once. You're almost always going to do better on the second time because you have the information. You learned a lot figuring out the first one. So now going into the second, you're going to kind of start with a head start and already understand the image or the subject a little bit better. And so you might be surprised at how much you learn in just doing it 2 or 3 times. So I would encourage you, find a sketchbook that you like, draw something more than one time. Even if it's not super detailed, it's helpful to understand how we learn through that repetition, even with the same subject. I have learned a lot about drawing a full figure just by doing it a whole bunch of times. I can do it a lot simpler now, a little bit more loosely because I'm not maybe as stressed about it, and it just sort of gives me the freedom to approach that subject in a new way. So try it out. But if you're feeling strong, you're feeling bold, go for 100 and let me know how it goes. You'll probably finish before I do.